Words are weapons. I'm standing at the top of the world. Ashton Albert, elder son of the shipping magnate J. Ballon Albert, crowed into the deep purple skyline. And I like what I see. His voice sounded smug in its drunkenness, despicably self-assured. Bastian hated it, though he sent the arrogant weasel an approving smile as he stared up into a fleece of clouds. Ashton's younger brother Arthur, a shitcan in his own right, elbowed his way onto the steel scaffolding, standing perilously close to the edge for a 17-year-old boy recently conquered by drink. Make room for me, Ash. I want to see what it feels like to stand on top of the world. Technically, Phoebus Devereaux, youngest grandson of New Orleans' current mayor, interjected in a nasally monotone. You're standing on a half-built hotel along the coast of Louisiana. You're nowhere near the top of the world. Bastian wanted to laugh. Instead, he grimaced. He could swear he'd seen Phoebus adjust his spectacles while speaking, like a gazelle who'd limped onto the Serengeti in the exact moment the lions decided to feed. Ash and Art would not be kind to him for this transgression. Shut your sniveling mouth, you little rat! Ash yelled over his shoulder. No one cares what you have to say. Art echoed like the good little sycophant he'd been raised to be. Bastian crossed his arms and leaned against a steel column. He took a moment to check his pulse, pressing two fingers of his left hand against the side of his throat, though he desperately wanted to take this spoiled bastard to task, or at least imagine what it would feel like to do so. He held his tongue and allowed the scene to unfold. Bastian hated this bullshit. That raised the question, why was he here at all? His lips pushed forward, his eyes panning across the silhouette of New Orleans. Because Sebastian Saint-Germain loved money. In his nearly 19 years, he'd discovered there were only two things he loved more: his family and his city. Money made all manner of grievances disappear. It erased sins and paved pathways into palaces of power and influence. It made what had been impossible possible. It was the greatest lesson his dead parents had ever taught him. With money, you could buy anything and everything, even a way to save your own life. It was a shame his parents hadn't learned that lesson in time to spare themselves. Or Emily. Bastian pressed away from the metal column, drawing closer to the edge of the unfinished structure. So what do you think? Ash spun around, grabbing hold of a steel cable to maintain his balance. I think it's precisely the kind of project my father would love. He's been telling us for some time that Marigny is in need of a fine hotel, Art added. It's in a perfect location, so close to the quarter. He knows that. Ash spat at his younger brother. It's why he picked it, you fool. Why my uncle picked it, Bastian corrected, keeping his tone mild, good-natured, decidedly unmurderous. I'll definitely discuss it with him, Ash said. It's a perfect project for me to whet my appetite and put that expensive Princeton education to good use, Art teased. Trust me, I've put it to good use. Just ask the horse on the other side of Rampart. Ash chortled like a drunken hyena. Even the way he laughed made Bastian want to deck him, to stop and watch the blood drip from his nose, to relish what happened next. The city planning committee might present a problem, however, Phoebus interjected yet again. They haven't granted anyone permission to build a hotel this tall in forever. Art shoved Phoebus in the arm, the slighter boy stumbling into a steel column. Who gives a rat's ass about them? You and your brother seem to have a disturbing fixation of rodents, Bastian replied. And you're not wrong, Phoebus. I was hoping to consult with you about that. He shifted alongside the boy, careful to keep his posture light and threatening, a feat in itself as he stood nearly half a head taller than the youngest Devereaux. Your opinion on how to go about this would be much appreciated. Bastian didn't need his opinion. He needed a member of the politically connected Devereaux family in his pocket. Phoebus was as good a mark as any. He'd recently returned from a stint at Oxford, and rumor had it his mother had grand plans for him in the way of a political future. Politics was the next great frontier. Bastian patted Phoebus on the shoulder as if they were old chums. Shrewd business was about identifying an opponent's fatal flaw and exploiting it. You'd be of great help to me in this matter. I'd appreciate it immensely." Phoebus swallowed, his brown eyes bright behind the rims of his spectacles, betraying how flattered he was to have garnered Bastian's notice. "I'll look into it. Good man." Bastian struck his shoulder again, this time a little too hard. He needed Phoebus to stand up straighter, speak with conviction. If he did, he would be a force to be reckoned with one day. Worth at least 4 of Art and 8 of Ash. Art tugged a leather-wrapped flask from inside his frock coat pocket. He took a long swig and passed it to his older brother. "I don't know if the sun god is going to be any help to you on this, Bastian. He's too busy scaring away all the wences his mother keeps tossing his way. Now she's even trying to recruit from the dregs of the Ursuline convent." Ash guffawed again. Bastian gritted his teeth and checked his pulse a second time. A wicked light flashed in Art's eyes. "I heard there are a few choice morsels among the latest arrivals." Ash laughed even louder, the scent of stale liquor spoiling the balmy night air. "Maybe I should have a look." He sneered at Phoebus. "Would you even know what to do with a honeypot, Devereaux?" Rage swirled in Bastian's fists, a bloodlust longing to be slaked. He needed to mind his temper. It had often been his undoing as a boy. It had cost Bastian the thing his uncle had desired most for him, an education at West Point and all that it entailed. Now Uncle Nico insisted he marry well to remedy the loss, a prospect Bastian despised. The tittering debutantes of New Orleans, as well as their meddling mothers, wearied him past the point of reason, a fact that amused his uncle a great deal. "Being bored by them is far better than being enamored," Uncle Nico would say. "Never fall in love with a mortal, for love is an affliction. It always ends in blood." He'd warned countless times, in countless tongues. Anger had also cost Bastian his sister, a young woman with a fiery temper and a ferocious heart. A lump gathered in his throat, as it always had for more than a decade. He swallowed it the next instant, disdaining any sign of weakness, any chance for an opponent to best him. Though Bastian fought it, his thoughts drifted unbidden to another young woman with a fierce soul, to her unflinching nerve and rapier wit, to the darkness that lingered in her gaze, to hair that glistened like a raven's wing, and eyes the color of envy. Bastian wanted to slide his fingers into that hair, loosen it from its bonds, let it cascade around her shoulders in a waterfall of black ink, pause to grip the silken strands before savoring the salt on her skin. Love is an affliction. Frustration heated through Bastian's veins. He had no time for such nonsense, despite what Odette had to say. Managing his uncle's affairs consumed most of Bastian's waking hours, following General Lee's surrender at Appomattox 7 years ago. Nicodemus Saint-Germain had begun buying land in port cities throughout the South, with a plan to one day own the largest collection of luxury hotels in the country. Most of the year, Uncle Nico traveled between his holdings in New York and Charleston, leaving control of their New Orleans operation largely to Bastian. As such, there was always someone who needed something, be it a word in the right person's ear or an intervening handful of coin. Countless decisions to be made at the drop of a hat. Celine Rousseau was an unwelcome distraction. She brought with her nothing but trouble, as she'd proved several days ago during Michael's interrogation at the convent, when she'd attempted to bait them both, a silly attempt that, by all rights, should have failed. Alas, it did not. It was as if she held Bastian by a spell, even at a distance, as if he'd been told not to think of the color red. Now all he saw were its vibrant hues, in the sunrise and the sunset, in every trembling flower, in the splash of wine into a crystal glass. It always ends in blood. Bastian already had too much to lose. This beguiling girl, with a sense of humor to match his own and a story begging to be told, would not be yet another casualty. Not if he could help it. "I'll be sure to speak with my father about this tomorrow," Ash said with a toothsome grin. Bastian countered with an equally obnoxious smile. "Excellent. Then I suggest we return to terra firma and grab ourselves a plate of the best saumonier in the city, along with a chilled bottle of Chateau d'Yquem. Art howled into the sky, while clumping drunkenly toward the suspended platform system positioned alongside the structure, Phoebus trailing in his footsteps. Ash lingered behind for a second. The only thing is, he pulled Bastion closer by gripping his forearm, an action that sent the ball of latent anger from Bastion's chest into his throat. I know my father isn't going to cotton to some of your associates. A cool wash of surprise unfurled down Bastion's spine. Either Ash was far more reckless than Bastion had first surmised, or he was a complete fool. Neither boded well for the bastard. Nevertheless, they reached a critical juncture in their conversation. A decision needed to be made. Bastion knew what Ash meant. He simply wanted to hear him say it. So he raised a brow in question. Come of it, Bastion. You know of what I speak, Ash continued. Bastion widened his smile. It appeared his bloodlust might be slaked tonight after all. I haven't the faintest clue which of my associates troubles your father. You'll have to be more specific. His voice had gone quieter with each word, until the last was no more than a whisper. A man like J. Ballon, Albert, can't be seen doing business with Chinamen and... It took less than a second for Bastion to draw his revolver from beneath his frock coat. He leveled it before Ash could take another breath, slow to react. Ash remained stock still, his mouth agape, his eyes blinking sluggishly. Behind them, Art stumbled to his brother's aid, only to be knocked from his boots by something he neither saw nor heard. A ghost in the wind. To his credit, Phoebus knew better than to interfere or so much as to utter a whimper. Indistinct shapes melted from the lines and shadows of the skeletal building, moving too quickly to track. They scuttled down steel columns soundlessly, blurring through the darkness until they sharpened into focus, forming a circle of cloaked figures around Bastion and Ash. What the devil? Ash's voice shook. Bastion stared him down, a smile of supreme pleasure taking shape across his face. Allow me to introduce you to some of my associates, Ash. He aimed the revolver at the shocked boy's chest. They'd like a word with you. Before the night was through, Ashton Albert was going to piss his pants. Bastion wouldn't relish the sight, or the smell. No, that was a lie. He'd relish the sight immensely. It was time for this insufferable creature to be laid low, to know what it felt like to have nothing. Not even a mother or a father nearby to save their son from the demons lurking in the darkness. Tension raked across Bastion's shoulders. With a subtle twist of his neck, he forced his muscles to relax. It had been almost a year since unremitting anger had taken hold of Bastion when he thought of his parents' untimely demise. Of all things, he wished it wasn't a whimpering Ashton Albert to serve as a reminder of what he'd lost. Yet another reason to relish this weasel's comeuppance. It was just as well. Bastion supposed he could make do with the sight of J. Ballon Albert's elder son dangling horizontally over a metal platform 8 stories above New Orleans. A burst of feminine laughter barreled into the night. Hortense took hold of Ash's polished boots and spun the boy around once more, the uncut jewels in her massive rings flashing through the darkness, her ebon skin radiant against the velvet sky. When the pulley suspending Ash above the platform creaked, he cried out, begging for reprieve. Déplaise, mon cher. Hortense cooed. I can't hear you. Boone laughed heartily, his cherubic features filled with delight. At the building's edge, Jay twirled his mother-of-pearl dagger between his fingertips, his black hair coiling in the breeze. Hortense's sister, Madeline, rolled her eyes. Near the hem of her cloak, stricken silent by fear, sat Art, who proceeded to vomit on the platform a second time, his chest heaving, his face soiled by snot and tears. What do you want? Ash wailed. Bastion intended to answer him. Eventually, Oi, Bastion, Nigel said, his Cockney accent gruff, his expression severe. Don't descend to his level, Gov. Some becoming of an honorable leader. Bastion snorted. Which fool said I was honorable? Depravity has no bounds. Amen to that. Boone interjected in an exaggerated drawl. Grunting, Nigel adjusted the ties of his cloak. That's enough. He sliced a hand through the air. Arjun shifted closer, his lips wrapped around a smoldering cheroot, his expression one of shared agreement. Bastian studied them in amused silence. Like Odette and Jay, Nigel Fitzroy had been at his side from the beginning. Boone, Hortense, and Madeline following soon thereafter. Arjun Desai had arrived to New Orleans less than a year ago, but he'd joined their ranks quickly, becoming more than a mere colleague or acquaintance. Bastian prized the counsel of these 7 strange individuals above most things, though he would only admit it under extreme duress. Thumbscrews, boiling oil, and the like. I really should find some new friends, Bastian mused. Arjun exhaled a plume of blue-gray smoke. If you can afford it. His hazel eyes glittered with amusement. Spoken like a bloody Maharaja himself, Nigel guffawed. Annoyance flashed across Arjun's face. In many of your beloved crown circles, a Maharaja is no better than a mongrel. I would never. Dogs and Indians not allowed, Master Fitzroy. Right at the entrance of your beloved Astoria. Anger darkened Nigel's features. If it had been left to me, none of that tosh would have happened. I know better, just as I know my betters. A benevolent imperialist, Arjun said around another cloud of smoke. How refreshing! A feeble cry cut through the night, returning their attention to the matter at hand. Bastian gripped Ash by the rope around his waist, bringing an end to the slow torment of spinning in a circle. I'm telling you this because I suspect you didn't know. He began in a conversational tone. My mother was a quadroon, a free woman of color. Those associates your father could be seen working alongside, they are me. They are my family. He paused, dropping his voice to a whisper. No one insults my family. I didn't intend to. Shut your mouth, you miserable swine, Boone interrupted. God is speaking. Bastian silenced him with a look, then turned back to Ash. Such a shame. I was going to share a bottle of wine with you, Ashton. Now, you'll have to partake in a meal with those who prefer a very different kind of drink. When Bastian finished speaking, the tension in the air pulled taut like a string about to snap. Ash blinked away his tears, forcing himself to focus. Whatever he saw in the faces around him caused his lips to quiver and his shoulders to shake. Bastian knew what he saw, what Art saw, what Phoebus had hidden from in the precious moment prior. Demons, creatures of blood and darkness, death made flesh, Bastian's family, for better or for worse. Art heaved again beside Madeline's feet, choking as he struggled to calm himself. Bastian glanced at Arjun, sharing a wordless conversation. The next instant, Arjun reached for Art's wrist. The boy slumped forward a moment later, granted a blessed pardon. Tears streamed sideways down Ash's face. All I said was... Bastian stepped back, cocked his revolver, took aim. Please, Ash begged. A suspicious stain darkened the front of his trousers, the acrid smell of urine suffusing about him. I'll give you whatever you want. I won't say anything. I'll forget this ever... No, Bastian said. Never forget this as long as you live. Words are weapons, and nothing else matters when the devil has you by the balls. He fired a single shot. Ash screamed. The rope dangling him above the platform snapped, his bound body crashing against the metal with a resounding clang. When he rolled over, blood dripped from his nose, its scent curling into the air, warm copper mixed with the salt of the sea. Hortense and Madeline stopped moving, stopped breathing. Jay sheathed one of his blades with a snick. Boone threw his head back, inhaling deeply, his eyelids squeezed shut. Frowning with obvious frustration, Nigel crossed his arms while Arjun ground out his cheroot beneath his heel. Bitter amusement wound through Bastian's chest. Another wish granted. Today might be his lucky day. Ash fought against his bindings as the cloaked figures around him drew closer, their eyes silver coins beneath the crescent moon. Then Madeline, Hortense, and Boone fell on Ash like whips cracking through the night. his cries of terror muffled by the heavy fabric of their cloaks, by the sounds of ecstasy rising into the air high above New Orleans. Nigel watched the frenzy in cutting silence, his long arms crossed, the judgment on his face plain. "You're better than petty revenge, Bastian. Your uncle wouldn't be pleased." "I never claimed to be a saint," Bastian replied, his expression cool. "And Nicodemus isn't here tonight, is he?" "Gomage," Jay muttered in gratitude before wandering back toward the edge of the unfinished building, twirling a butterfly knife around his fingers with insouciant ease. "A fine shot," Arjun interjected, deftly changing the subject. "Severing a rope with a single bullet, bravo." Bastian said nothing, his eyes tightening around the edges. "What?" Arjun blinked. "Was it something I said?" He swayed unsteadily on his feet. "You're weak." "It happens. It took a lot of effort to subdue the brother." "Unlike you, I'm not God," he joked. A dark smile ghosted across Bastian's lips. "See to it you have something to eat." "But of course, old chap." Arjun bowed with a flourish. Despite his best efforts, guilt kindled in Bastian's chest, threatening to catch flame. He battled the feeling, refusing to be troubled by their judgment. Then he called for Madeline, who blurred to his side with the stealth of a shadow, her cloak trailing behind her like smoke. Not a trace of blood could be seen anywhere, until she opened her mouth, showing white teeth stained crimson and canines as long as those of a wolf. "Make sure no one dies tonight, Mad," Bastian said softly. "We have too many eyes on us as it is." "Mais oui, Bastian." Madeline nodded, her features serene. "And what should we do with him when we are done?" "Leave the trash with his younger brother in the alley near their favorite watering hole. See to it they remember nothing. As always, my trust is with you." Madeline nodded, then whirled back to resume her meal. Exhaling slowly, Bastian glanced about the open space until his gaze settled on what he'd been searching for: Phoebus Devereaux. Huddled in a corner, his knees pulled to his chest, undoubtedly praying he'd been forgotten for the first time in his life. When Phoebus caught sight of Bastian gliding his way, he wrapped his arms around his knees, clasping his hands together until his knuckles turned white, making a point to move with care. Bastian crouched in front of Phoebus. "I'm genuinely sorry you had to see any of that." "What are you going to do to me?" Phoebus trembled like a dying leaf in a breeze. "That depends," Bastian said, "on what you want me to do." I don't understand." "I can't simply let you go." "You could?" Phoebus's eyes went wide behind his smudged spectacles. "If you wished it." Phoebus nodded. "You don't have to worry. I won't say anything, Bastian." "I know you won't." A half-smile curved up Bastian's face. "Who would believe you?" Sympathy laced through his features. "Just another tantalizing story about the court, which I've found to be far more helpful than hurtful, for reasons I'm certain you can understand." Shuddering, Phoebus looked away. "Conversely, I can help you forget." Bastian paused. "I can make it so the events of tonight never haunt your dreams." Phoebus swallowed. "Are you going to kill Ard and Ash?" "No. They won't remember anything either." His expression hardened. "But they don't have a choice. You do. I never take away the choice from someone I respect." "You respect me?" Phoebus's voice was hoarse. "You're a good man. See to it you stay that way." Bastian unfurled to his feet with the grace of a jungle cat. "And make your decision." Phoebus pushed his spectacles up the bridge of his nose, his fingers trembling. Conviction settled across his sweating face. "I want to forget." "And so you shall." High above the Crescent City, the youngest grandson of the mayor began to scream bloody murder into a sky bruised with clouds.